The Subcommittee on the Environment will come to order. Without objection, the Chair is authorized to declare recesses of the Subcommittee at any time. Welcome to today's hearing entitled Innovations in Agrichemicals, AI's Hidden Formula for Driving Efficiency. And I recognize myself for 5 minutes for an opening statement. And first, as I've mentioned to our witnesses, I apologize for the delay in getting started. This morning, we had a little change in agenda that we weren't anticipating. It took us a little longer. So my colleagues will be filtering in here. Hopefully, they won't miss much of the opening testimony, but we will go ahead and get rolling with it. So with that, good morning. Thank you to our witnesses for being with us today. This morning's hearing topic on agricultural innovations is very important to me, as my home district is home to over 200 specialty crops, including most of Florida's citrus operations and many other different diversified agriculture interests. I represent what we think is probably the largest agricultural district east of the Mississippi, which is a surprise to a lot of people who aren't from Florida and think everyone either lives at Disney World or at the beach. But we actually have a lot of agriculture interest in Florida. We absolutely require safe and effective access to agrochemicals like pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, and fungicides, which are essential to keeping our crops healthy and productive. Today, we're discussing the current and emerging AI-driven scientific and technological advancements in agrochemicals. We will explore how artificial intelligence is transforming the industry by enhancing key functions such as research and development, testing, production, compliance, safety, reviews, and applications. In fiscal year 24, I was able to secure $4.5 million in federal funding for the Center for Applied Artificial Intelligence at the University of Florida's Institute for Food and Agricultural Sciences Gulf Coast Research and Education Center. It's a mouthful, but it's our AI Center for Agriculture associated with the University of Florida. That center will serve as a hub for statewide agricultural and AI initiatives and demonstrations with a strong focus on pest management. And in my district, citrus greening has devastated growers and weakened the backbone of Florida's agriculture economy. The research conducted by the Institute and other academic partners, like the ones represented here today, are critical to our discussion. These efforts are not only advancing pest management, but also lead to the breakthroughs that we need in agricultural technology to finally cure the disease that's killing Florida citrus. Additionally, EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin recently announced much-needed changes to address the backlog of over 504 new chemical reviews and 12,000 pesticide reviews that are well past the expected timelines under the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, FIFRA, and statutory timelines under the Toxic Controlled Substance Act, TSCA. As a part of Administrator Zeldin's Powering the Great American Comeback Initiative, advancing American leadership in artificial intelligence is a central pillar, with a focus on supporting AI development through clean energy to position the United States as the global leader in AI. I believe this hearing will demonstrate what's possible with AI in agricultural review space and inform policymaking as the EPA continues to develop its AI plan. I'm eager to hear each witness's testimony and look forward to working with committee members to ensure the United States remains the global leader in AI-driven scientific and technological agricultural advancements. I now recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for convening today's hearing on innovations in agrochemicals. And thank you to our witnesses for sharing your insights. Now, Rhode Island may not be the first state that comes to mind when people think of agriculture, but we're home to innovative aquaculture and many small farms and producers, including Wright's Dairy Farm in North Smithfield and Phantom Farms in Cumberland, Rhode Island. Rhode Island's 1st Congressional District is also home to research institutions, scientists, and innovators working on the front lines of resiliency and sustainability. And in a state with a long coastline, finding solutions to the climate crisis is crucial to preventing long-term damage from sea level rise. Agrichemical innovation to reduce the harmful climate impacts of farming through artificial intelligence, data modeling, and chemical safety is important and matters to us. AI systems depend on a foundation of long-term, high-quality data. For the agrochemical sector to operate safely and effectively, models must account for shifting climate and weather patterns. But that foundation is under attack as we speak. The Trump-Musk administration has crippled the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's data infrastructure and hollowed out its scientific workforce. Dozens of important data sets, reports, and services have been thrown out the window over the past several weeks due to what I believe to be reckless actions, actions that will be problematic and cause irreparable harm. Without accurate and transparent forecasting and climate modeling, farmers cannot react and plan ahead. So let's be clear, no algorithm is better than the data that it runs on. And if we let politics dismantle the very systems that provide the data farmers use to determine when to plant, water, apply pesticides, and harvest, we're setting ourselves up for failure. And that's across sectors, that's across states, that's across our entire country. We must also remember that innovation often begins with research at public universities funded by federal dollars. But these investments are being systematically eroded by the Trump administration. The president has paused billions of dollars in federal grants to research institutions and universities. That's going to cause delays to critical work, destabilizing programs, and jeopardizing the very pipeline of talent and discovery that fuels our innovation economy in this great nation. Our three witnesses today represent the direct benefits of federal investments in fundamental research. Thanks to federal funding, scientists at public universities throughout the country are working right now to develop AI models and data science that will make agriculture more efficient. The massive commercial and industrial opportunities available in agriculture today are only possible because of these fiscally responsible investments. But the Trump administration is not that interested in this research. They're trying to slash the National Science Foundation's budget by $4.9 billion. That's a 55% cut to our country's steward of basic research. It is the very agency that supports the underpinnings of agricultural technology, including AI. The entities that will be most hurt by these Trump administration actions are not academic elites. It's the rural institutions, agricultural extensions, and our community colleges, our young students who simply want to pursue and advance the field of science. Thanks to Trump, their opportunities are rapidly disappearing, rapidly. We all suffer without federal investment in science to address challenges in agriculture and climate. Businesses cannot maintain their advantage, workers suffer, and our global leadership is diminished. Innovation may be the topic today, but the foundation is science. And right now, that foundation is crumbling beneath our feet. I urge my colleagues to stand up for our federal scientific agencies and support current and future scientists. We need innovators to continue their work responsibly, ethically, equitably, and well-funded. So I say thank you to our witnesses. We look forward to hearing from you, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Amo. I know Chairman Babin has interest in making a statement. When he arrives, we'll recognize him. But at this point, I'd like to turn it over to the Ranking Member on the minority side, Ms. Lofgren, for her statement.
Thank you, Chairman Franklin and Ranking Member Amo, for this hearing. My district is home to the salad bowl of the world, which produces more than half of all the leafy greens consumed across the United States. The Salinas Valley is considered one of the most important agricultural hubs in the nation, and its success is due not only to its fertile land, but also to the hard work and resilience of the farmers and farm workers who keep it thriving. Agrichemicals play a role in sustaining agricultural productivity and food security, but we can't ignore possible public health risks that come with widespread chemical use. Chronic exposure to certain pesticides has been linked to cancer, reproductive disorders, and developmental harm. Agricultural workers and communities who live near farms face particularly higher risk because of their proximity to these chemicals. Today's hearing highlights how artificial intelligence may offer new tools to reduce those risks. AI could potentially help farmers apply chemicals more precisely, target pests more effectively, and ideally reduce the overall amount of chemicals used. That is something that both farm workers and farmers would welcome. I look forward to hearing from our distinguished witnesses about how these innovations can create safer working conditions, improve health outcomes, and support sustainability in agriculture. However, innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. AI algorithms depend, as the ranking member just mentioned, on robust, reliable data that is verified through rigorous and systematic reviews of human health hazards. The fiscal year 2026 so-called skinny budget proposes a substantial cut to EPA's Office of Research and Development funding, essentially eliminating the very office that researches, evaluates, and provides publicly accessible exposure data for over 1 million chemicals. Housed in ORD is the Integrated Risk Information System known as IRIS, which identifies and characterizes the health hazards of chemicals. IRIS is an important source of toxicity information used by the EPA as well as by state and local health agencies, as well as international health organizations. The placement of IRIS in ORD was intentional. It ensures that science is insulated from political pressure. The IRIS program is also critical to government efficiency, which should have been something the so-called Department of Government Efficiency would have supported. But unfortunately, this administration seems to be more efficient at gutting programs than keeping our constituents healthy. Even if AI innovations continue to advance, we'll lose the ability to make accurate health risk assessments and informed regulatory decisions without a strong scientific foundation. If we handcuff the scientific arm of EPA, we will discover the consequences of pesticide exposure the hard way through impact on people who've been exposed. It doesn't matter how powerful the AI models are if they're based on unreliable or missing data. Using AI to approve new chemicals without the critically necessary scientific health data to ensure they're safe is not innovation. I think that's recklessness. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Lofgren. Okay, now let me introduce our witnesses. Our first witness today is Dr. Brian Lutz, Vice President of Agricultural Solutions at Corteva Agriscience. Dr. Lutz is responsible for driving Corteva's AI strategy to accelerate agricultural innovation. His leadership focuses on leveraging AI to transform the agricultural sector. He oversees a large, globally distributed organization of data scientists and software engineers who are responsible for the integration of AI across various aspects of Corteva's operations. Our next witness is Dr. Daniel Swale. He's an associate professor in the Emerging Pathogens Institute and Department of Entomology and Nematology at the University of Florida in my home state. Go Gators. His current research intersects with AI with the goal of discovering and developing novel mechanism pesticides to provide knowledge on chemical modes of action and defining mechanisms of resistances, published over 50 peer-reviewed publications. And our third witness is Dr. Boris Camiletti, an assistant professor in the Department of Crop Sciences at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and he is affiliated member of the Center for Digital Agriculture. His research and extension program focuses on the development of integrated disease management strategies, emphasizing the use of artificial intelligence and other technologies to improve precision and sustainability. And I now recognize Dr. Lutz for 5 minutes to present his testimony.
Chairman Franklin, Ranking Member Amo, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me here today. So I'm here representing Corteva, a world-leading pure-play seed and crop protection company that's headquartered in Indiana. I oversee all aspects of digital enablement and artificial intelligence for R&D at Corteva, and I'm also proud to be from a fourth-generation corn and soybean farm in Ohio, Northeast Ohio, a town called Lordstown. Let me start with a fact that too few people recognize, and that's that innovation lies at the heart of modern agriculture. American farmers are among the most productive and produce the most abundant, affordable, and secure food source for America and the rest of the world. American farmers produce 300% more per acre today than they did 70 years ago, allowing greater production from a smaller footprint. This is a great American success story that has innovation at its heart. Today, I'd like to talk about how artificial intelligence can accelerate innovation and in doing so, cement American leadership for generations to come. We believe innovation will become more important in the future than it is today because the world is adding more people, but we are not adding more farmland. At the same time, crops are getting harder to grow as extreme and changing weather patterns place farmers against new and rising insect, disease, and weed pressures. That's why, as a company, we invest nearly $4 million every day in research and development to unlock the latest game-changing tools for farmers. AI is already playing an important role in 3 distinct ways. First, in discovery, second, in development and manufacturing, and third, in helping farmers know when and how to use our products to maximize productivity. Discovery is the process by which scientists identify new technologies that can be turned into products used on the farm. For us, this might mean finding a new molecule that can effectively and safely control pests that harm crops. This is an extremely complex process. We might think of crop protection molecules as keys, and those keys are intended to fit very specific targets in pests, usually proteins, locking the protein and eliminating the pest. The first challenge is that we don't always know all the locks or the proteins or how they work, so we don't know what to target. And there can be tens of thousands of proteins in a given pest. This explains why, historically, discovery has largely been a game of chance. So let's start with the locks, or those proteins. For nearly a quarter of a century, computer scientists and mathematicians have been trying to develop models to predict the structure of proteins, but with limited success. In just the past few years, a new class of AI models has been developed that works with sequences of DNA data to be able to predict the structure of proteins in just a matter of seconds and with accuracy comparable to laboratory methods. Mapping the structure of proteins helps us understand which key we need and how to make it work. So let's turn to those keys, the crop protection molecules that we develop for farmers. Not that long ago, we had to screen many thousands of potential molecules by applying them to pests in hopes of finding new ones that might be effective. Today, we're using AI to search the vast chemical universe for molecules that can interact with specific proteins within pests to keep them from harming crops. Our goal is specificity, to find a match that'll do its job and only its job, leaving the rest of the plant and surrounding environment and biodiversity intact. Bringing it all together, AI has revolutionized discovery by allowing us to trade randomness and chance for prediction, specificity, and design. We can now model proteins and molecules with unprecedented speed and accuracy. For example, we recently used a new AI model to model how 10,000 different molecules might be used in crop protection, all within a matter of just weeks. And the model was able to identify dozens of new potential crop protection molecules that our chemists likely would not have found otherwise. Corteva is also an American manufacturer. Our largest manufacturing site is in Midland, Michigan, and we have long led the industry in manufacturing innovation. AI has helped us continually optimize our manufacturing processes. For example, we use fermentation to produce some of our leading products. Over the past few years, we have used AI to both engineer the microbial strains that drive our fermentation reactions, as well as have used AI to optimize the reaction conditions. These improvements have allowed us to run manufacturing operations that are extremely efficient, which in turn have enabled us to maintain a strong manufacturing footprint here in America. Finally, AI is also helping us to better understand when farmers should treat each of their fields based on data related to the specific environmental conditions, predicted pest pressures, and their unique management practices. For example, we're piloting a fungicide timing model combining field-specific information with our internal data. This helps farmers know exactly when to spray to combat key corn diseases. The impact is significant. We regularly help them increase yields by 4 to 10 bushels per acre. Farmers appreciate this because it not only improves the sustainability of their practices, but also puts more money in their pockets. AI is transforming everything we do at Corteva. It's without a doubt one of the most profound technologies ever to be invented. We believe there's tremendous opportunity for our government to support and incentivize advanced innovation, including by leveraging the benefits of AI and to benefit American farmers. The race to seize the opportunity has begun, but America is not the only country on the track. If we want to win, we need to move smarter and faster than our competition. As an American innovator, manufacturer, and partner for American farmers, Corteva believes that with the support of our government, we will do exactly that. Thanks again for having me here today, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Dr. Lutz. I now recognize Dr. Swale for 5 minutes testimony.
First, thank you, Chairman Franklin and the rest of the committee for the opportunity to testify in this honored house today. I am Daniel Swale, and I am an associate professor of insecticide toxicology and drug discovery in the Emerging Pathogens Institute and Department of Entomology at the University of Florida. My lab aims to discover and optimize new chemistry for control of insect, fungal, and bacterial pests of row and specialty crops, as well as insect and arachnid pests of livestock. These pests directly lead to billions of dollars lost in economic revenue, and for a variety of reasons, our ability to control these pests has become severely limited that justifies the need to develop new technologies. The United States has historically been a global leader and has dominated the landscape in innovation and development of novel agricultural technologies, including agrochemicals. However, we no longer are the global leader in agrochemical innovation or agrochemical development. Japan exceeds the United States in the numbers of first-in-class pesticides by over twofold, and China is near equal to the U.S. with total numbers of insecticides produced. Even more concerning, I personally believe the gap between other countries and the United States is expanding rapidly. One of the largest challenges to ensuring economic viability and sustainability of our agricultural industry is the shrinking number of pesticides available for rapid and effective control of pest populations. I believe the reduced number of efficacious insecticides and the inability to control these pests will be the primary driver of reduced sustainability of our agricultural industry. A prime example of this is the Florida citrus industry. This industry was valued at $9 to $10 billion a mere 5 years ago and is now experiencing near collapse due to an insect named Asian citrus psyllid that transmits a bacteria to the citrus tree to prevent fruit ripening. Yet control of this insect pest has become a tremendous challenge due to limited number of effective insecticides available. My researchers have developed first-in-class and highly effective insecticides that kill this pest. Unfortunately, the likelihood these novel chemicals will reach the market is low due to increasing regulatory restrictions as well as an expensive and prolonged developmental pipeline for synthetic pesticides. To remedy this, we have turned to employing AI technologies to discover chemicals of the natural world because the registration requirements for natural products are significantly lower when compared to synthetic insecticides. While natural chemistry is known to have the potential to for discovery and innovation of effective molecules, the historical barrier for natural chemistry has been the absence of technology capable of comprehensively understanding chemical structures and interactions at scale. But the ability to understand this molecular language of the natural world is now emerging. Leveraging advanced artificial intelligence, companies like Inveda out of Boulder, Colorado, are at the forefront of this transformation. They have developed the capability to predict chemical structures in complex natural mixtures with unprecedented speed and accuracy. Inveda is focused primarily on natural pharmaceutical development, but together, we are applying this innovative AI technology to discover and develop novel agrochemicals. Although high optimism surrounds AI technologies, challenges do exist, and these gaps must be addressed prior to maximizing the potential of this approach. The outputs of AI-driven discovery are only as good as the inputs you provide the system, and currently, the inputs needed for agrochemical discovery remain poorly understood. To date, agrochemical discovery and early phase development has been restricted to the private sector, which do not share data sets due to intellectual property restrictions. This has led to gaps in public knowledge needed for appropriate AI inputs, and I believe has limited the utility of AI for discovery of new agrochemicals. So how do we address this challenge? I believe AI enables public entities, such as universities, to play a key role for the very first time in the discovery of agrochemicals. This is due to their ability to test fundamental questions oftentimes not addressed by the private sector. Thus, involvement of the public sector into agrochemical discovery will allow fundamental data sets and AI inputs to be public that will promote advancement and innovation at the national and global levels. I encourage Congress to consider investments into academic institutions that can perform agrochemical discovery, which will promote public-private partnerships at the state and national level. It is here where we will find innovation and advancement of the agrochemical industry to restore the United States at the top of the podium for agricultural innovation. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this conversation, and I look forward to our discussion today.
Thank you, Dr. Swale. Dr. Camiletti, you're now recognized for 5 minutes testimony.
Chairman Franklin, Ranking Member Amo, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm Boris Camiletti, assistant professor in the Department of Crop Sciences at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and I am also affiliated with our Center for Digital Agriculture. My research focuses on improving plant disease management by using artificial intelligence, remote sensing, and other approaches to help farmers use fungicide more efficiently and sustainably. Originally from Argentina, I came to the US as a Fulbright scholar to study sustainable crop protection. Today, I lead a multidisciplinary team combining plant pathology, remote sensing, and AI to address one of the most urgent threats facing US soybean farmers, red crown rot. Red crown rot is a soil-borne disease that was first detected in Illinois soybean fields in 2018. It can cause premature plant death and yield losses of up to 50%. It's spreading rapidly across Illinois, which remains the hardest hit state, and has also been confirmed in fields in Indiana, Kentucky, and Missouri. Because it survives in the soil for several years, it's extremely difficult to manage. Some farmers are even switching to continuous corn to avoid the disease, which brings its own sustainability challenges. What makes red crown rot especially challenging is that it's hard to detect in its early stages. The disease shows up in scattered patches, and symptoms often don't appear until late in the season. Scouting in the field is labor-intensive and impractical at a large scale. That's where artificial intelligence and remote sensing come in. My team uses satellite imagery and machine learning to identify red crown rot hotspots in the field. We train the models with high-resolution spectral data from visible to near-infrared bands and use ground truth observations to teach the algorithm what disease plants look like. These models can detect disease areas, and just as importantly, they can track disease progression over time. This technology has real on-farm impact. We are building tools that generate prescription maps, so instead of applying fungicides across the entire fields, farmers can target only the infected areas. For example, if only 25% of a field is diseased, our approach could reduce fungicide use by up to 75%. This strategy reduces cost, protects the environment, and helps preserve the efficacy of our fungicide tools. We are now preparing on-farm trials to compare traditional uniform applications with AI-guided site-specific treatments. These trials will help us measure the yield, disease severity, and chemical use side by side, so we can show growers what precision disease management looks like in the real world. Beyond soybeans, this technology has broad potential. It can be adapted for rust diseases in corn and wheat, for tree crops like almonds and pistachios, and even for weed detection. It's a platform for precision agriculture that reduces chemical use while improving control. This work is possible thanks to the collaborative environment at the University of Illinois and our Center for Digital Agriculture. This center brings together scientists and engineers across disciplines to solve real-world problems in agriculture. It provides the infrastructure, computing power, and partnership we need to develop these tools and bring them to farmers. I also want to highlight the importance of land-grant research. At the University of Illinois, our mission is to serve the public. The AI technology I've described today were made possible by public investment, including hedge funding and support from farmer-led checkoff programs such as the Illinois Soybean Association. Public support ensures that the tool that we develop serve the public good, helping farmers make better decisions, lower input costs, and manage diseases with greater precision and less environmental impact. In closing, I want to emphasize that AI is not just a buzzword in agriculture, it's a practical solution to a real problem. With red crown rot, we have a narrow window to act. AI-driven tools give us the ability to detect the disease early, respond quickly, and use chemicals more responsibly. This is the future of crop protection, and your support makes that future possible. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Camiletti, and I thank all of our witnesses for their testimony. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questions. Dr. Swale, some for you to begin with, and for all of you, there's so much to unpack in your written testimony. I know 5 minutes didn't give you long to get into that, so I'd like to dive a little deeper. Dr. Swale, you mentioned your work in developing a dual mechanism insecticide to fight the Asian citrus psyllid, which spreads citrus greening. Obviously a massive issue for us in the state of Florida. From your perspective, how close are we to having a new commercially viable insecticide derived from your research that could be used by citrus growers in Florida? And what do you need? What kind of support or partnership do you need from the federal government that would help accelerate that?
That's a great question. I think that we have commercially viable compounds that can contribute to the decline of citrus. Unfortunately, these are synthetic insecticides, and the regulatory pipeline is prolonged and unbelievably expensive. So the direct answer to your question is I don't think we're close at all, even though we have the tangible compounds in hand. And that is why I'm very excited about opportunities with companies like Inveda, because identification of natural compounds can mitigate this prolonged and arduous process that ultimately usually results in failure. So if we're able to identify natural compounds, that we can potentially have something that can be field ready in a few years.
So for those of us that aren't deep into the science as you are, can you explain a little bit about how AI specifically will help with those natural alternatives versus the synthetic? I mean, why is it different?
Yeah, there's a number of differences, and my colleague here from industry might be able to expand on it a little bit, but the natural world is largely untapped due to the complexity of, one, the chemical structures and how you obtain these how do you get the molecules out of the plant. AI is contributing to that quite significantly.
So AI just will assist in the speed, just because of the vast numbers?
Speed and being able to understand what this molecular language actually looks like. Natural compounds are very, very bulky and huge and look funny compared to synthetics. So how do we parse that down and utilize this? We haven't been able to wrap our head around that, but it appears as though artificial intelligence has begun to pick up ground on that.
Right. Dr. Lutz, could you comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. To the point made by Dr. Swale, I mean, natural products, naturally inspired products have a greater complexity than synthetic molecules. Synthetic molecules tend to be small in size. Biologicals and natural products are much larger and more complex. So not only with the speed, but when you think about the vastness of chemical space, it is almost impossible for us to understand as humans how many potential molecules could be out there to be able to interact with pests to prove as effective crop protection molecules. AI models allow us to work through this space at speeds completely unprecedented. At Corteva, we have been moving into this space, to Dr. Swale's point, in part due to some of the regulatory considerations with the amount of time it takes to get new synthetic molecules approved. So we see moving into this space as an area where we can help bring new and effective innovations to farmers faster. But it is an extremely complicated space that AI is letting us distill.
Okay. You'd mentioned in your testimony that Corteva is using AI to model structures of over 10,000 molecules, and you can do that and look at how they might be used for crop protection in a matter of weeks. How does that compare to what you'd be doing traditionally without the use of AI, time-wise?
Yeah, I mean, discovery traditionally is like finding a needle in a haystack. I mean, you're talking about screening tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of molecules before you find one in which you're willing to make a bet on to be able to go through the perhaps decade-long process of trying to get it registered. Making that decision early on is extremely important, and so our discovery funnel, we're searching through this space as best we can to find where we want to make those bets. AI opens up that funnel and lets us find what we believe are more impactful, more efficacious, more sustainable molecules sooner that we want to make those bets on as we move forward.
Right, thank you. I have other questions, but I'd now like to recognize the ranking member from Rhode Island for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In late January, the Trump administration ordered the Department of Agriculture to remove all climate-related data from its websites. This politically motivated data purge is denying farmers access to vital information and assistance they need to apply for federal loans, receive up-to-date technical assistance, and make time-sensitive crop decisions. Without these critical data sets, farmers are left in the dark, and the consequences for our food system could be severe. Following a lawsuit, just last week, the Department of Agriculture agreed to restore climate change-related content to its resource pages. This is yet another example of the unlawful, inefficient, and completely unavoidable harm that we've seen from this administration in its engagements that have really hurt many Americans. So we have this question to every witness. Can you speak to how federal data sets support or enable research into agrochemicals, and how would research or innovation capacity be impacted if access to publicly available data were reduced? I'll start with you, Dr. Lutz.
Yeah, I mean, it's very important to understand sort of the chain of what we do in order to deliver AI-enabled technology to farmers. Not only does it deal with how we apply models to finding those solutions, but it requires on the models themselves, in which we have depended on very important industry partnerships to develop those models. Those models can actually then be traced back to basic research that has been done at our universities for the last half century that has set the stage for how we build these models. And of course, the models themselves sit atop a data foundation that we absolutely could not develop AI models without. We do depend on the many data sets that the government has supported over the last several decades to be able to drive innovations for farmers. The fungicide timing models that I've mentioned that we have been developing do rely on climate data that we get from the public sector to be able to deliver those.
I'll say that I think federal funding has been a foundation for which major breakthroughs and innovation is built. I personally believe that a commitment in fundamental science by the federal government is critical for the U.S. to remain at the leading edge of innovation and advancement. Our university has asked the question of whys and hows, and without an understanding of why and how a system works, it's challenging to innovate.
Dr. Camiletti.
Yeah, so I think you highlighted very well that in order to train this model, we need to have very robust data. And to do that, in our case, for example, we need to go and sample as many fields. We need to travel. We need to go to every field to record data to train these models. And that is done with workforce, with students, with postdocs. So specifically for this project, we have some proposals that were going to the USDA, and those programs were put on hold. That is impacting us, our workforce, in our ability to go and collect real good and robust data to train these models. We rapidly found another program at the NSF with the cyber physical systems where we will be submitting this proposal in order to support our students and postdoc.
Yeah, and you know, look, I think it's important to hear from you directly about how foundational the partnership with federal funding, your institutions, supporting the private sector. There's a robust amount of partnership that unlocks possibility, that gets us on the first steps of innovation. And again, we have seen action that cuts right at that and undermines our capacity to grow. A recent Forbes article estimated that the Trump administration's proposed National Science Foundation and National Institutes of Health cuts will cost, not save, American taxpayers $10 billion annually. These cuts dismantle our pursuit of basic research that has consistently generated strong dividends for the public. Every dollar in basic research generates about $1.40 to $2.10 in economic output, and I believe that's a conservative estimate. And without this basic research, we will not have the information needed for industry to perform applied research and innovate new products and processes. And so my time is set to expire, but I do want to echo what you have said both in your testimony and response to that first query, that we need this partnership, we need that foundational data in order to get this work done. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize the gentleman from Alaska, Mr. Begich, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First question to Dr. Lutz. While AI has greatly accelerated proteomic target discovery, how is AI being used to ensure that we don't see unintended consequences of such deployments?
Yeah, I mean, with any new technology that yields a lot of opportunity like AI, we also have to look at the other side of the coin, which are the risks that it can bring as well, especially when we look into the biological and the chemical space. Models, if used inappropriately or trained inappropriately, can be used to create technologies that are of not good intent. We strongly encourage that all players in industry or elsewhere that are creating these models take precautions to not train models with data that potentially makes them available for inappropriate use. We also have to put in place simple and common sense, I think, frameworks to be able to do testing, red teaming, trialing of models to assess their ability to produce dangerous outputs. We also need to have clarity, I think, in the regulatory agencies that can oversee the use of these models. Right now, it is a bit of a patchwork. I also would caution us against allowing this to go to too local of a level where we'd end up with a patchwork set of regulations that might be established at the state level that can be very difficult to navigate how these models are used more broadly. We certainly have to look at the safety of these models, but we just need any regulations to not hamper the ability to innovate with them.
Just to get a sense, and this is open to anyone today, how much do we think yield per acre might be improved through AI-led agriculture management practices? What's available to us? What's at stake?
It's considerable. I mean, I'll start, but if you start thinking just about yield potential, and I'll use U.S. corn as an example, we know that we can produce on the best yielding acres over 600 bushels per acre, and yet national yields are around 180 bushels per acre. Much of that loss is driven by controllable factors, many of which can just be mitigated by using products much more effectively, so applying at the right time to avoid losses. But then when you go beyond that, the ability to leverage AI to identify attributes that we can then improve crop genetics, the seed genetics, there's tremendous additional potential there. And then, of course, once we get to the crop protection products themselves, to make them more specific and more efficacious. Truly, we're at a point where I believe whether it's acute or targeted impacts that are affecting agricultural production in any of your states, or for our ability to meet the growing demand of agricultural globally, there is very little that these technologies can't solve or help support.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to my colleague here. That's a little downstream of me. I work upstream in discovery and early phases of development, so.
Yeah, so in soybeans specifically in our case, we are dealing with a disease that is taking up to 50% of the yield in soybeans. That's a deal breaker, so some farmers are not doing soybeans anymore because of this economic impact. So we have a huge window to improve our management and to improve the yield directly. But the other thing is, we want to be profitable, we need to think also in lowering the inputs cost. So if we can reduce or make a more efficient use of fungicide, it's less money that we need to invest in a fungicide to keep our yield. So in that way, we can increase our revenues or returns.
That's a pretty remarkable response there. So we could double soybean output, we could triple, more than triple corn output per acre, and that's not even touching the input genetics. That's just optimizing what we have right now. That's really impressive. And I think it highlights just how important it is for us to make these investments in AI-driven productivity gains in agriculture, because as productive as the American farmer is, they have the potential to be much more productive going forward. And with that, I yield the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Begich. I now recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Ms. Lofgren, for her 5 minutes of questions.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This has been an interesting hearing, and I think there's a lot of exciting opportunities here with AI. In my district, there are a lot of innovation going on in terms of pest management, for one thing. One of the things that I saw recently was, and this works for weeds, not necessarily for pests, but it's laser zapping of weeds. And it's a big machine, and it's got more computers than a Tesla, and it identifies what's the crop and what's not, and with lasers eradicates the weed. And it's better than chemicals because it incinerated that weed and it's not coming back. So there, we have a solution for some of this, but some of it we don't in terms of pesticides. I recently visited a wonderful group, a nonprofit called Jacob's Heart in Watsonville, California. And what they do is provide support to families where there's a child with cancer. And up on the wall, they had a little map of the cancer clusters, and the childhood cancer clusters were very much in the ag areas and not in the urban areas. And it does reinforce the concern that exists about health exposures to some of these chemicals. So the idea that we could find new efforts to fight these pests that were less harmful is really an exciting opportunity. Here's my question. You're using AI to find, to unwind proteins, to find new approaches, but you could also use AI to evaluate the health risks. However, I'm wondering about the database that's available to you that's proposed to eliminate iris. I don't know whether that's sufficient now to utilize AI to test what you found against health risks, or what could be made available. Anybody's got an answer to that question, I'd love to hear it.
Well, so first, I would just respectfully disagree with the idea that there are hotspots of cancer near the use of pesticides. I'm not familiar with the study or the data that.
Well, it's not a study. I just looked at the map of their clients, and it just jumped out at you.
Yes, but I do believe any of the products that we produce, we go through rigorous safety testing, and when used as directed, we find no evidence of any systematic effects with human health. To the broader question, though, around how can AI help with the digestion of additional data sets, including data sets related specifically to human health or any other attribute related to the safety of the products that we produce, there's a lot of opportunity to apply AI in these ways. To your point, though, it very much depends on the data and the data that are available and having reliable, unbiased data to do that.
And how do we get additional data? And the other question is, AI systems hallucinate sometimes. How do we guard against that in an area that is so important as this? I don't know, Doctor, do you have an answer to that? Or?
I personally think that over-reliance on technology can kind of shoehorn us into a problem, right? If it's premature, then we have issues. And I think the human pharmaceutical industry is a perfect example of this. Back in the 2000s, they sequenced the human genome, and we were going to have the answers to all of the problems, right? We had all of the perfect drugs, and we were going to be able to make things cheap and have all chemicals for all diseases. But that actually was opposite of the case. Everything became more expensive and more prolonged with the new technology.
If I may, Google recently unfolded every protein in the human body and posted it for every researcher in the world to look at. It's great to have the Human Genome Project. We supported that out of this committee. But without that advance, there was a limitation on what could be done with it. And I think there's a lot of reasons why pharmaceuticals are cost through the roof, including some that are, I don't agree with President Trump on many things, but they are being, the costs are being reduced in other countries, and we're covering the cost of the research. So I don't think that's a direct
Well, I would enjoy the
correlation.
opportunity to continue with you. Because,
I would too.
Because there are many studies about showing the drivers of what happens when you over-rely on technology. Ultimately, it comes back, but you have to have the databases and thus the inputs to inform that model.
I see my time has expired, Mr. Chairman, so I will yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Lofgren. I now recognize my colleague from North Carolina, Mr. Rouser, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you very much. This is a very interesting subject. So in North Carolina, agriculture is greater than a $100 billion industry, and our largest industry by far. But you also have the effect of so many folks moving into the state. Fields that used to grow tobacco, sweet potatoes, soybeans, cotton, you name it, are now growing houses, and those houses are there to stay. So you got to, in order to, feed our country and feed the world, we've got to produce that much more on less. Can you talk a little bit about AI and the role in achieving that end?
Yeah, and maybe I would start. I was one of the transplants actually from Ohio to live in the great state of North Carolina for several years, and loved my time there. But I do understand that there is a competing demand for things like housing and other development with agriculture. I will say that several years ago, the narrative was, how are we going to feed the world? And it's a true concern. My personal concern is quickly eroding of whether or not we can do that because of the types of technological advances we're seeing. I absolutely believe that this is possible. I believe the challenge is just making sure that we can get those technologies to market because of the points that we were making earlier. The ability to increase productivity per acre is still quite tremendous. While I think we need to have some thoughtful balance and different competing needs for land, I don't doubt our ability to feed the world in coming decades.
So the efficiency of application, is that much greater to achieve that? Or give me an example there.
It's not only the efficiency of input use, right? So making sure that we're using inputs in order to not have a limitation to production, to maximize production. But we also are developing the next generation of technologies that have seed that can withstand more stresses, as well as crop protection products that are much more efficacious. But altogether, we certainly have the ability to continue to drive productivity per acre much higher than where we are today.
You hit on something that's I think more true today than it has been in the past, or at least it seems so, is where, say you start off the year, it's really, really dry and hot, hard to get the crop out of the ground, or the converse where, it's really great in the first part of the year, you get the crop out of the ground, and then you just have baking sun for 2 or 3, months, very, very dry. What's the potential for lack of better terminology, of weatherizing these crops where you have a more uniform crop based on very erratic weather patterns?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we are developing new products, especially on the seed product side, we not only look at the genetic potential of the seed, so its top-end performance, but we also closely watch things like what we call yield and yield stability. Yield stability is very much looking at the ability for a crop to withstand those sort of acute stresses. And when you've looked at the last several years, actually, if you look at USDA production data here in the U.S. for corn and soybeans, it's been quite remarkable where, of course, we have local events that are very hard for farmers to get through. But in aggregate, we've actually been able to get through many of these sort of severe seasonal impacts with less impact to productivity than what we have been able to historically, and a lot of that's due to the resilience that we're integrating into crops.
Yeah. So there's some concern out there about the use of pesticides and herbicides and how that affects the food supply. Any comment from any one of the three of you in regard to that?
I would just emphasize again that, look, we don't want to produce any products that aren't safe for humans and safe for the environment, and we stand behind all of the science and the risk-based analyses that we do of our products, including with our government agencies and regulatory bodies. I think that we can't lose sight of the fact that without our crop protection products today, production would be much lower, and we already have over 800 million people around the world that don't have enough food to eat, and we're adding 2 billion more people by mid-century. It's just not possible to imagine a future where we can feed everyone without these tools for farmers.
Yeah, absolutely, and very well said. I yield back my time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Rouser, and I'll recognize my colleague from Oregon, Ms. Bonamici.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, but really thank you to the witnesses for being here and for your expertise. So I represent a district in the Pacific Northwest. Agriculture is a significant part of our economy. We have a lot of plant nurseries, wineries, hazelnut farms, In Tillamook County, which is in the district I represent, of course, we have dairy. Statewide, we have a lot of wheat, beef, but I want to say that the research-driven agrochemicals are really an important part of what keeps the industry productive and sustainable. Scientists at some of our Oregon universities have been studying sort of emerging issues like agrovoltaics, where they're locating solar panels and agriculture on the same land, showing really promise in reducing chemical inputs, but also improving water efficiency and lowering energy costs. So innovations like that, we should be scaling, not sidelining. I want to note that. Concerned, of course, about the recent staff cuts at the Agricultural Research Service, disrupting some of the work in Oregon, but also on critical issues like weed control, specialty crop breeding. Those are concerning for me. I look forward to exploring in this committee how we can strengthen this ongoing innovation and protect public health and the environment and support farmers. But I do want to note, particularly as a member of the bipartisan AI task force, that I certainly recognize the potential, tremendous potential with artificial intelligence, but we have not yet addressed the privacy, security, and bias issues. We wrote a report. A report's not policy, so we don't have that federal policy yet. And I know you're concerned about 50 different standards, but we have to have something in place at the federal level. Dr. Swale, you mentioned that the outputs are only as good as the inputs. I agree with that. We have workforce issues as well. And I also share the concerns raised by several of my colleagues about cuts and layoffs at science agencies, especially NOAA, the National Weather Service, some of the pesticide reduction work I did at the state level. I know that weather forecasts are really critical for application of pesticides. And Dr. Swale, I noticed you had grants from NIH, NSF, USDA. Also, what's happening with I'm on the Education Committee as well, and the Higher Education Subcommittee. I'm extremely concerned about attacks on higher education, especially land-grant universities. Thank you for mentioning that. Also, thank you, Dr. Camiletti, for being here as a wonderful example of the contributions immigrants bring to our universities and to our country. So, Dr. Camiletti, how would the federal workforce reductions at USDA, like those that are affecting weed control and especially crop research, how would those affect our capacity for additional development in AI-supported agrochemical work?
Sorry, I don't know if I understood correctly the question.
Well, we're seeing workforce reductions at USDA.
Yes.
Especially, I'm concerned about reductions in the work that USDA does on weed control, specialty crop research. How would these reductions take away from our ability to do more innovation in this area?
Well, specifically in our case, we collaborate very closely with the USDA and was affected by all this situation. But again, it's affecting the workforce. We don't have any, now we don't have any students or postdocs that can help us to collect the data that we need from the fields to be able to improve these models. These models rely very heavily on the type of data that we get, and they need to get more and more data every season in order to be improved. And that needs more workforce. So in that particular situation, it's less collaboration projects that we have together to support this.
And we're hearing that people who are graduating with degrees in science fields and engineering are being recruited by other countries. I mean, it's with the cuts at our science agencies, it's really concerning. Dr. Swale, I think about my producers, small plant nurseries, the smaller specialty crops. They might want to adopt some precision tools to help them reduce agrochemicals, but there's costs and training barriers. How can academic research help scale AI technologies that can benefit these small as well as the larger producers, and what successful extension or public-private models would work with the specialty crop sectors?
This is a great question. I think that AI allows, and I see we only have 30 seconds, so I'll be brief, but I think AI allows universities the opportunity to participate in the discovery pipeline all the way from the beginning to the end. And we have all of the pieces in place. A lot of universities, University of Florida included, have supercomputers and major investments in artificial intelligence, as well as the expertise to be able to design these molecules. What we really need is to be able to leverage the collaborations that we built with small startup companies such as Inveda that can kind of put all of these pieces together and actually begin to to exploit the technologies that are there.
Thank you. And as I know I'm out of time, but as I yield back, I just want to emphasize again the importance of the basic research done at our universities across this country that leverage dollars in the private sector. And I yield back. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I now recognize our representative from California, Mr. Fong.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for allowing me to join you all on this this vitally important topic. I don't serve on the subcommittee, but the chairman was gracious enough to allow me to waive on. I represent the food production capital of California, the Central Valley, and so this is a very important topic. For multiple growing seasons, cotton farmers in my district have been hamstrung by bureaucratic red tape, preventing them from using otherwise effective agrochemicals to combat the extremely destructive lygus pests. Like the chairman, I have citrus. The Asian citrus psyllid is a grave concern to us. I've got grapes, almonds. We have the glassy wing sharpshooter. I can go to the laundry list of pests that we're trying to deal with. With the certification process for EPA labels taking upwards of 13 years to complete, it's imperative that we streamline the process from R&D to application to ensure growers have access to vital and safe pesticides that allow them to produce affordable food for our nation. As infestations have only grown year over year, and Mr. Lutz, you're very well aware of this, growers are without the effective tools are now using larger amounts of less effective products, which is not only costly but doesn't solve the problem. We're killing beneficials. We're leaving growers with an ongoing infestation. I mean, it's a horrific situation. So that's why, in your testimony, Mr. Lutz, you shared how AI is accelerating the new product discovery and development process, bringing even more effective pest management tools to the market. How can Congress restructure the label approval process to ensure that these effective new tools can get into the hands of growers faster?
Yeah, thank you, Representative Fong. I mean, it's a great question. It's probably one of the most daunting things that weighs on my mind. You use the example of some of the challenges faced in your state, especially around cotton with the lygus issue. This is what makes it particularly challenging, right? Because there's a great technology in the market already that can help mitigate a lot of those losses. So as we think about our opportunity to develop new technologies, it becomes a bit challenging, right, to think about the requirements to make those investments to bring new technologies to the market when existing technologies are already blocked. I think what I would emphasize most, though, as we think about labeling and registrations, and again, we as a company do not want to produce anything that is not safe for people, safe for the environment, safe for farmers. But we also recognize right now the registration process is terribly long. Anything that we can do to streamline the registration process would be extremely impactful for our ability to deliver new innovations. The only thing I would emphasize is that we wouldn't necessarily trade speed for uncertainty. We need to have a regulatory process that we know how to navigate, where we know how to get things to the market, but I believe we can do it much faster.
Yeah. And then this is the important piece, is as AI allows us to screen and develop these new tools, we have to get into the market, and that's the tension that's there. We've seen it in California. I'll tell my colleagues, the state of California allowed farmers, instead of using a tool that they knew worked, was using a tool they didn't think worked. They thought would work, but it didn't, and it killed beneficials, and it led to more pest outbreaks, and that's something that we want to avoid. I want to ask Dr. Camiletti, pesticide and biological applications are costly for growers, which makes the need for precision application all the more important. Your research in terms of AI and satellite imagery for targeted intervention, how can both growers and pesticide manufacturers leverage AI to improve the efficiency of their operations through precision application, timing, and methodology?
Yeah, I used to live near the Fresno area, so I'm very familiar with the Central Valley. In that case, we had some diseases in pistachios orchards, for example, and I think AI has a strong potential to identify this disease before that we can see it with our eyes. That is because there are some changes in the canopy that we can detect with remote sensing that we don't see with our eyes. That is the key, because that will affect the timing of the fungicide applications. Not only to control the disease we have it, but in order to not to spray fungicides if we don't have the conditions for the disease. We need to reduce exposure to pesticides for people working in those orchards. And I think the AI is a great tool to anticipate, to predict disease outbreaks, and more importantly, to avoid unnecessary use of fungicides. In that case, that is my field of study.
No, I appreciate that. Allowing more precision applications, spraying less, being more effective. This is an exciting time, and we can use this technology to make things better for our growers. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Fong. And now I recognize my colleague from North Carolina, Representative Ross, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of the panelists for being with us today. As you know, innovation in the agrochemical industry has transformative potential, not only for the United States and global agriculture, but also for institutions leading the charge in research, development, and education. North Carolina State University, in my district, a recognized leader in agricultural research, is harnessing the power of new technologies, including artificial intelligence, to advance sustainable and efficient agricultural practices. Through AI-powered data analytics, the university accelerates the discovery of new agrochemicals, optimizing formulations to improve pest control, disease management, and crop protection. Over the past century, North Carolina has grown to become a national leader in agriculture. It is a pillar of our state's economy. Some agrochemicals used on our farms and across the United States have had a significant environmental and public health impact, not always to the good. Long-term exposure to harmful chemicals, particularly from non-organic food products, has raised concerns regarding the safety of both consumers and those involved in food production. My hope is that by focusing on the development of environmentally sensitive agrochemicals with the assistance of AI and emerging technologies, we can protect our environment, public health, and farm workers from adverse effects while maximizing food production. Sustainable agriculture depends on maintaining the health of ecosystems, the safety of food, and the well-being of farmers and workers. A recent survey by the Association of Science and Technology Centers has revealed that U.S. adults value science, but aren't necessarily connecting federal investments in science to things that are useful in their daily lives. Each of you has testified how federal investment at university research levels has enabled the opportunities with AI and agriculture today. However, the Trump administration has proposed to cut much of this funding, including a 55% cut at the National Science Foundation. NC State is the largest recipient of National Science Foundation grants in our state. These cuts will cripple our universities in their ability to perform this cutting-edge research and train the next generation of researchers. Dr. Swale, in your testimony, you note that the U.S. is no longer a global leader in agrochemical innovation and development. Can you elaborate on the factors that have contributed to this decline and what steps we can take to restore our leadership in this space?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think there's a number of different reasons for this. I think if I was to pick one for the sake of time, it's just the simple cost that it takes us American-owned companies to move a molecule from my lab into his company and out to the farmer's hands, and then the 10 to 13 years in the estimate that it is for that. I think what that has driven is more Me Too science. This company has already developed this chemical, so we're going to do something very similar, and there's no innovation, or we're just going to repurpose existing chemicals and change it slightly. I think that has reduced the innovation. So I'm hopeful that the inclusion of artificial intelligence platforms allows us to, as he said, we've mentioned a lot of times, to map the protein structure and find these molecules, but that's only one part of it, right? We don't know what these chemicals look like. What does the molecule look like to kill a fungus or a sucking pest versus a chewing pest? And all of the chemical parameters are different. So can we, in academic science, can we start to define these inputs that right now are isolated within these large agrochemical companies? And why that's relevant is it allows us the opportunity to start focusing on more niche agricultural pests, right? So the large, and they do a fantastic job. This isn't to mitigate their efforts, but they focus on global, large, economically relevant pests, and citrus doesn't make the cut. A lot of these other more commodity products don't make the cut. So I think moving this, utilizing AI, allowing us to start to develop products towards more of a niche environment will expand innovation in the United States.
And of course, to my point, my intro point, NSF funding frequently helps with that because NSF takes the risk on some of the innovative research and some of these niche areas. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you, and I thank the witnesses for their valuable testimony today. Members for their questions. Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Babin, I didn't see you slide in there. To bat cleanup, our chairman of the full committee, Mr. Babin from Texas.
Sorry, I'm running a little late, Mr. Chairman. I want to say thank you to the witnesses for being here as well. Dr. Lutz, Corteva is a leader in agrochemical innovation. And as we heard from your testimony, America should seize the opportunity to lead. The Trump administration has made it a priority to invest billions of dollars into this new age of AI. We want to ensure that the private sector is not hampered by bureaucracy and red tape, but we also must ensure that we're getting the science right across the board. And number one, how can Congress and the federal government best support the private sector to bolster this innovation?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, one of the things that we can't lose sight of, especially when we think about AI driving innovation in this space, is that it is a complicated ecosystem. We as Corteva are applying these models to drive new innovation for farmers, but we have to recognize that many of these foundational AI models have actually been built by the tech giants, American tech giants that are training these models at tremendous scale. They not only benefit agriculture, they benefit other life sciences, human health, pharma as well. The advancements in those models build off of decades of research by brilliant minds at our university that have been pushing the forefront of how AI can really be used. I mean, the big tech companies now have just made the factories effectively in which these models are built, but they're built off the thought leadership that come from our universities. And of course, the fuel for all of these models is the public data and the private data that goes in to feed and train them. I think what's really important to recognize is that if we take any one of the legs of these stools away, we can lose our competitive advantage. We're in the enviable position globally of having the minds, the technology, the chips, and the companies that are driving the innovation and application to deliver the valuable results. So, you know, I just recognize, like, we don't want to home in on any one part of this. We need to think across the board of what it takes to maintain American leadership in AI, and it's an all-of-the-above approach.
That's well said. Thank you. Further, Americans see and hear about AI and what it can do, and they're skeptical. How and why is Corteva convinced that the positive impact on agriculture will be real and the developments utilizing AI might we see in the future that aren't already here?
Yes. Yes, thank you for the question. And this has come up actually in a few other questions as well. This idea of model bias, hallucination. I want to reiterate a couple of things. One is that all of the models that we produce, we rigorously validate, just as we would any other discovery. We have a human in the loop. We're running assays in the lab. We're testing the results. It's also really important to be able to differentiate. There's so much going on in AI right now. There's an entire class of models that are focused on natural language processing. Think of all of the chat bots and the agents that are getting wrapped around products and put into software. Those are certainly capable of hallucinating, and software companies are looking at how do they control those models to avoid those misbehaviors. When we're applying these models to things like biology and chemistry, it's not a matter of can it hallucinate, because again, we test it. It either works or it doesn't. And so again, we're testing it to show that these models truly do work. It is not a hypothesis, is AI going to change the way that we can innovate in agriculture? We know it to be true because we're already seeing the results in what we're able to discover.
Excellent. Okay, Mr. Chairman, that finishes me up, so I yield back.
All right, thank you, Chairman. And again, I thank the witnesses for their valuable testimony today and the other members for their questions. The record will remain open for 10 days for additional comments and written questions from members, and this hearing is adjourned.